Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our summer/fall. I guess we're going into fall, not quite fall yet. Education and employment training series. We are very excited to host these trainings. They are designed to empower families, students, and professionals with tools and information to support success in school and employment. Before we begin, I would like to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Tammy Sebastian. I am a special education advocate for Disability Rights Ohio. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman in my 50s with medium length blonde hair that I have pulled up in a bun today. And I am also joining you from my home office. Just before we get started, I wanted to let you know that this is being recorded and we will have it posted to the Disability Rights Ohio website as soon as possible. We also have the other videos, the other trainings posted to our website. So if you want to go take a look at those after today, you can go and review those and share those out however you deem necessary. So if you go to the bottom of the screen, there is closed captions on the bottom right hand side of the screen. There is also next to it on the left is the Q&A, which we'll be using today. And we will have our Disability Rights Ohio staff watching that. And there's also, the chat is closed. There's also a raise hand option that is in the middle of the screen that you may use too if you need to ask a question and be taken off there. And I'm just going to share my screen really quick. I'm sorry, I should have did that before we got started. Oh, that is not what you need to see. And just give me 1 second. There we go. Does everybody see my screen? If somebody from the staff can just give me a thumbs up. I just want to make sure it's up there.
It's up there, Tammy. It looks good.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about special education dispute resolution options. And just before we get started, just want to talk about the importance. We'll be covering this today, the importance of resolving special education disputes and really understanding what those different options are and when to use them, because you do have many different options that you can use. So resolving disputes effectively ensures that students receive appropriate educational services without delay and is tailored to their unique needs. So it ensures that students receive appropriate support. We talk about building that mutual trust and understanding between educators and families. And many times, especially in the work that I do, when we have families that reach out to us, many times that trust has been broken down. So we'll be talking about how to build that trust and how to work together as a team. Also, it encourages collaboration, encourages shared decision making, and that always leads to better outcomes for the student. And also, the biggest piece of it is it reduces conflict and promotes a problem-solving approach. We know that if we don't collaborate between the school and families, that can have negative outcomes for the student. And effective resolutions really help maintain that trust and collaboration throughout the child's school career. So these are some of the key principles with collaborative problem solving. So dignity. When we talk about dignity, we're talking about treating everyone with respect, making sure that it's child centered, so that we're making sure that everything is focused on the student, and that we're not getting into um, the position part of my position or the school district's position, that we're coming back and making sure that it's focused on the needs of the child. Um, Also helping empowerment, helping parents participate meaningfully in decision making, and that's something that I really talk about a lot when I talk about building communication and being collaborative, is making sure that we understand what it means for a parent to meaningfully participate, understanding communication styles, how that parent really feels like they're able to meaningfully show up in the IEP process. And then when we talk about collaboration, um, again, talking about that interest based approach instead of the positions and holding the positions, that always leads to problem solving. And then, of course, relationship building, strengthening trust, strengthening communication, and making sure that we're doing that as a whole, as the IEP team. And then, of course, we want to make sure that there is professionalism that's maintained, um, uh, ethical, respectful interactions. And then some strategies we talk about for collective problem solving. So, and you keep hearing me talk about the positions and the interests. So always coming back to finding that common ground. And I can tell you sometimes it takes a lot to work through that, but if everybody is dedicated and keeps the needs on the child, you can come and find those common interests. And we'll talk about different ways that you can do that as we go through the training. Um, so asking open-ended questions. So actively engaging in the discussions, always asking clarifying questions. And you can do that during the meeting. You can do that after the meeting. I always tell families that I work with to there's nothing, I mean, keep asking those questions until you get that understanding. Um, so listening for understanding is also very important. Um, Understanding underlining concerns rather than just demands. Um, that really helps the process. If we understand where the school district is coming from, or if school districts understand where the families are coming from, we can work better to resolve those issues. And then evaluating solutions. So looking for multiple options to resolve the disputes. And sometimes it's just you have to get creative. Sometimes it's just asking the right questions, talking through those things. A lot of times, and I've heard districts do this and families do this alike, where they don't, they already assume this is going to be the district's response, or they assume that this might be the family's way of wanting to move forward. And I always say, be transparent, put everything on the table, because that's where those solutions are found. And then really separating people from the problem. That is a huge one, especially again between uh, families and school districts working together. Some districts might have worked with the parent for a while, and they have different views on what they have experienced with them. Please don't pass that down. Things change, and parents are working to really, and I talk with families about this a lot too. You are with the school district for a long time, so it's like a marriage. We're always going to be working towards um, solving what we can. So just remembering that, and I would say that for families too, with school districts, you might have an experience with a special ed director or a certain member of the IEP team, um, and that changes from year to year too. So try to separate the people from the problem, focus on solutions, especially don't get caught up in those personal conflicts. So, when we were talking about those different options that you have, we want to talk about some early dispute resolution options. So, some of those could be speaking with the child's teacher, um, counselor, principal, sometimes even just contacting the special ed director. A lot of times, when an issue arises within the school, special ed director is one person, has to be in many places. Sometimes just contacting the special ed director could be early dispute resolution. Um, Also, there are parent mentors. Some districts have a parent mentor that is able to work with the families. So, not all school districts in Ohio do. You can actually, I think it's www.parentmentor. You know what? If one of our staff could look it up. I pretty sure parentmentors.org. I could be wrong. I could put that in the chat. But that is a great way of early dispute resolution options, bringing them to the table and trying to work through things as well. And you can check on that website to see if there's a parent mentor in your district. Regular communication between parents and educators, and again, addressing concerns at the earliest stages, talking to the teacher, talking to the staff or the support staff in the building. And then also, early dispute resolution is holding an IEP meeting when those concerns or issues come up. So sometimes you need to look and review the IEP or revise. There might be things that need to be revised in the IEP. And then you could always bring in specialists or additional support as you see fit. And there is also, I talked about the parent mentors, but you also have Parent Training Information Center for the state. That is the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities. So that is also part of early dispute resolution options as well. And so this is another, so administrative reviews are another option for conflict resolution. It's really one that I don't hear a lot of people using, but it is an option, and for many different reasons. So you can really present a complaint to the superintendent, or whoever their designee is, and it's it's a way of it. Again, it's part of that early dispute resolution. It's a way of telling the district, here are the issues, here are the concerns, and taking it. So you might have already worked with the special education supervisor in your building or the special ed director, and you still don't feel like you have resolution. And it's not required that you do this before you file a complaint, but it could be a way of resolving it before you get to that. So when you do that, the school district within 20 days of the receipt of the complaint, the superintendent or the designee, like I said, they have to hold a review, and then they have to give you something in writing on what that review was and what the determination was. So it might be a quicker way of resolving disputes without filing a complaint. And so when we talk about early resolution assistance, we also have the Office for Exceptional Children at the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. They provide what's called an education program specialist that you can reach out to and call. So this is also considered early resolution. And they explain the federal and state laws regarding special education. They inform parents of their procedural safeguards. Sometimes they will connect families with additional agencies and support services. So you might reach out to them and they might connect you to Disability Rights Ohio, or they might connect you to the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities. So it's also, and sometimes they're able to also reach out to the school district and help try to resolve the complaint at the earliest possible time. So that is an option. And then when we talk about, so there is, so IDEA requires dispute resolution. So these are so we'll go over the legal basis of the IDEA requirements. So they must offer mediation to resolve disputes. So if you file a complaint, and this is something too that I also tell families as well, because a lot of times they'll say, should I file a complaint? Do I go to mediation? And I always say too, if you are going to write the complaint, they're always going to, at every step of the way, they're always going to offer mediation to you. So that is, if you're writing a complaint, they're going to offer mediation. It's up to you. You can take it. You can have mediation without filing a complaint. You also have the right to file state complaints. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Due process hearings must be available for disputes related to IDEA. Related to identification, evaluation, and placement, or FAPE, which is a free appropriate public education. And then resolution meetings are held before due process hearings. So again, they would offer you mediation. Then you would have a resolution meeting before you would ever go into a due process hearing. And then decisions from due process hearings can be appealed in state or federal courts. And then this is just an overview of your formal. So we talked about your early dispute resolution options. We talked about, so now we're talking about formal dispute resolution options. So you have IEP facilitation. We're going to get into each one of these: mediation, state complaints, and due process hearings. So IEP facilitation, and this is always, I like talking about the pros and cons too, because I feel like, again, these are all options that are available, and some it just depends on what the situation is on a case-by-case basis. But IEP facilitation is a neutral facilitator that kind of guides the team and make sure that everybody's working together and communicating. This is really great when communication is strained, but both parties really want to work together. Just again, making sure that everybody's on the same page. And then the pros of it is it can be less adversarial. It could help preserve relationships. It's voluntary. The cons is voluntary. So everybody has to agree. That's what that means. The family, the parents, and the team have to agree that they are both going to agree to facilitation. However, the changes that are made in facilitation of the IEP are legally binding. So in facilitation, you are actually working, and I think this is very important when we talk about the differences between IEP facilitation and mediation, is when you are working through, when you are going through a facilitated IEP meeting, you actually have the IEP there and you are working through the document. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in mediation. Do I need to stop? Does anybody have questions or want to keep? We're good? Okay. So mediation, again, voluntary process. Um, and again, we have a neutral mediator assisting both parties. I want to say too that mediators can also be so mediators can be facilitators, facilitators can be mediators, but you can't change the process when you're in it. You're not going in and out of facilitation and mediation. So if you're in a facilitated IEP meeting, you have a facilitator that might be able to be a mediator, but you're having a facilitated meeting. Just wanted to clarify that. And when is mediation best used? So really when both sides are open to compromise but need guidance. So where again, I told you we're facilitation, it's more you're working through the IEP, and you're really it's really about getting the team to communicate. This is when you need to come together. The district feels one way, you feel a different way, and it could be about anything. It could be about service minutes, how many minutes are needed. It could be about placement. So it's really about just getting together and coming to a place of compromise. The pros, it's confidential, it's free, so is facilitation. I should say mention that as well. And you come out with a legally binding agreement. That's possible. I should say that it's possible. That's the hopes that you would want to come out with a legally binding agreement. And the cons, again, requires mutual agreement to participate. So you have to make sure that both parties are willing to come together. Information shared during mediation cannot be used in any future legal proceedings. And it must be completed within 30 days of the request. So again, you would come out, you would have the mediation agreement. And then if that needed to be put within the IEP, then you go back and you hold that IEP meeting and discuss and put in there what needs to be there. State complaints. So again, we talked about that in the beginning. So they can, parent can file or family can file a formal complaint with the state. If they believe that there is IDEA violations, the complaint has to have specific facts in there. So to want facts on what the violation, what violation occurred. It's going to also ask for a resolution to that. Just so you know, that is a suggestion of what those resolutions are. That's not what the state always decides the resolution is going to be. The state must resolve the complaint within 60 days. And then the pros are the state investigates and issues a decision, and it does not require parent-school agreement. So once you bring the state in, the state is deciding for you. So mediation, facilitation, you're working together. The state complaint with input, they are deciding what that is going to be. And then the cons, it takes time, and it's limited to compliance issues. So again, we talk about they are only going to look at whether or not there was a violation of IDEA. And then they issue what's called a corrective action. And I just want to make sure that I also include that state complaints can be systemic or individual. So that is it for state complaints. I'm going to pause. I just feel like I'm running through this. Anybody have questions?
There was one question, Tammy, that was in the Q&A that was answered, and it was a question around overcoming the challenges of having kids in the general education classroom when we have regular ed teachers that don't want to take those kids, and unions that create barriers. I answered it, and I just answered it by saying that we see that in our advocacy, that we try to focus on working through the IEP process, asking for additional supports and services to be put into place in the general education classroom so that regular ed teacher feels more supported and able to teach a student who might have extra needs.
That's exactly how I think I would have answered it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I, you know, we've talked for years around, I always say if we really could do universal design for learning, then there wouldn't be special education, right? So, and I think it's just about working together, your intervention specialists and your regular ed teachers truly working together in the, especially if they're in a co-taught classroom. I know we call them many different things, but it's really about working together and making sure that we're really moving towards more of universal design. So what's good for students with disabilities is also good for gen ed students. But thank you, Kristen. And so due process hearings. So this is not these are options I can tell you, but this is not my area of expertise. So, but I will briefly go over this. So a due process hearing, and a best way to describe it is, it's definitely a legal proceeding. It's you go before an administrative law judge or an IHO, which is an impartial hearing officer. You are in a legal proceeding when you move forward with due process. So it is best used when legal rights are at stake and other options have failed. I think it's a hard, it's not an easy place to be, and it's hard to tell when you really would be at that point. I know that's very vague when you say legal rights are at stake and other options have failed. I know many families are probably like, oh yeah, it's definitely there. Or same with school districts. So it really is, it's not something that can you really want to do if you don't have to, for both the school and the families. It is lengthy, it is expensive, so it's really not something that you would go into lightly. The pros is it is legally binding and it provides due process protections. The cons is it's expensive, it's time consuming, and it definitely constrain relationships. Um, so it really becomes a court-like procedure. Um, and it's like I said, it's very lengthy. It is one of your options, and I can tell you, um, I, just from seeing case law, and I'm sure Kristen and Emily could jump into this too. Many, you know, we don't have a lot of great decisions that come out for families for due process hearings, and that's just the reality. And it's not something that you want to have to say, but it is true. Um, so, but it is an option.
I might,
And
I
so
might
when we
just,
talk, oh, go ahead,
sorry,
Kristen.
Tammy. I
Yep.
might just add a couple other things, having been through due process hearings, is just to think about when you're picking a remedy, um, how much energy and that you have to go through this process. One of the biggest advantages of the state complaint process is that the Department of Education does all of the investigation for you. They look for facts to support your position, and then they issue a finding. If you go through a due process hearing, you are the one who's going to have what we call the burden of proving your case, burden of proof, which means you're going to have to organize all of the facts and the witnesses and everything else to prove your case. And that can be a really big job, unless you have a lawyer doing it for you and you can afford to pay a lawyer to do it for you. So just think about those kinds of things before deciding you're going to request due process. We we have a lot of families who come to us are having already requested due process, and they have not thought about that, and they don't have all their ducks in a row, so to speak. So that is something that really needs to be planned out. So that's just my 2 cents worth on that.
I think that's great, Kristen. Thank you for adding that. And I also think too, when you were saying that about the state and being able to investigate for you, and then also a hearing officer has no prior connection to you, has not been involved, and they're going to be the ones that are making the final decision. So everything you're presenting to them is like presenting it to a stranger, if you will. So great point.
We have a couple of open questions.
Mhm.
The first one is, can you expand on the co-taught classroom? What is taught with the gen ed classroom should be taught with IEP class inclusion?
So what is a co-taught classroom? Is that the question? So that would be where the intervention specialist is working with the gen ed teacher and they're working together. Was that the question, Kristen?
I think it was. I mean, they're in the same classroom together with
Yeah.
both regular ed students and special ed students.
Yes.
Yeah. And
And
then
was there another question?
yeah, is the reason why we have poor due process outcomes because the state sees both sides, the student need, but teachers are not required to be educated on how to educate our students. I can tell you why I think we have poor due process outcomes, and it's primarily about the power differential between families and school districts. So in special education, the school district is in a due process. The school district always is represented by an attorney that they have on their they just are represented. So they have attorneys representing them in the process. They also control almost all of the records and witnesses. So they have the ready witnesses, the staff who will testify for them, and they have control over all the records. Most families cannot afford to pay an attorney to get them through due process. They don't have witnesses lined up on their side, so they have to find witnesses or hope that the school district witnesses will be professionally honest during testimony. There's just this big power differential between parents and school districts in this process. And so I think because the parent is requesting the hearing and has that burden of proof, they often can't meet that burden of proof because they don't control the documents and the records. They don't control the witnesses. And I also think that there's just there can be some bias on behalf of the hearing officers towards the school district because I think they see them in a professional light, and they don't often see parents in that same light. So that would be my feedback on that. Tammy, I don't know if you have other feedback.
No, I think you said it perfect.
Okay, well, that's all the open questions at this point.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a dog enter my room. Okay, so yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Kristen. So choosing the right option. So really, and I was going to say if maintaining a positive relationship with the school district is important, and it's not if, it is important. And it's important, but like I said, both ways for the families and the school districts to be able to work together. IEP facilitation and mediation would be the best choice if you're looking for that collaborative solution. State complaint, again, I'm going to say this, a lot of times, we work with families, and there are issues and there are concerns, but they are not definitely or specifically a IDEA violation that falls under those 6 guiding principles of a free and of IDEA. So when we're looking at evaluations, we're looking at whether or not there's parental participation, FAPE, whether or not FAPE was violated. So I guess one way too is a lot of times there might be issues with the teacher, specific issues with the teacher, or something happened between the teacher and the student, or it wasn't necessarily an IDEA violation. There are other ways to resolve those that are not included in this because they don't fall under the dispute resolution options in special education under IDEA. But there are other ways to address those things, but they would not necessarily be put in a state complaint. And then again, we talked about due process. So if they're very complex, systemic violations, those might be better for due process. Again, you know, if like we said with due process, it's a very lengthy outcome. So when we're looking for outcomes and wanting to do things at an early time, you know, I honestly, starting with you know, your earliest dispute resolution options, and then, you know, facilitation and mediation. And there is not, that I know of to this day, a cap on how many you can have. Obviously, you don't want to continuously have facilitations and mediations because you might not be moving forward from the issues. So really, when you're looking at that, consider the relationships, the timelines, the complexity of the issues when you're looking on whether or not you want to what you want to choose as an option. So again, we're going to talk about bringing back the discussion to the child's needs, using data and documentation. I know a lot of times as families, we'll hear from the school districts about data. You know, we like data too, because if you have the data and you have, as families, if you have the data and the documentation, it's much easier to be able to enter those discussions and move forward with what you feel like your child needs, because you have data to support it. School districts also need data to move forward. As far as special education is concerned, we have to have that need in order to put supports in place. Always prioritize clear communication, that active listening we talked about, ask those clarifying questions. You know, a lot of times you can say, help me understand, you know, or what did you know, can you be more specific about what that looks like? That's another great one. Well, what does that look like for my child? Who's going to implement that? So, and then always know your rights, understand IDEA, your procedural safeguards. And again, like we talked about earlier, there is just so much information out there. Disability Rights Ohio, we have a great website full of information, and we have everything from, you know, tips to Q&As. And then also there is, like I said earlier, our Parent Training Information Center. That their whole role is to make sure that parents are informed about their rights, train them in their rights. So, and they also have a wealth of information to help you and support you. And I know it's overwhelming, but you know, as you go through, even if you just, you know, take a little bit of information along the way as you need it, it will help you to become a more effective advocate for yourself. And then you would eventually transfer those that knowledge and that information to your student, because you want them to be a self-advocate as they grow older. And so really my final thought is the right choice really depends on your goals. So I would ask, you know, what are my goals? Where do I want to be? Really the nature of the dispute, And what's your outcome? What is the desired outcome? What do you want that to be? And then really make sure that you consider all options before you move forward. And then there's some of the resources we just talked about. So, of course, Disability Rights Ohio, and we're here today with you. The Parent Training and Information Centers we talked about, that's Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities. And Cadre has a wealth of resources and a lot about what we talked about today, because their whole focus is on dispute resolution and special education. They are the National Center for Appropriate Dispute Resolution and Special Education. They have videos that talk about positions, interests, breaks down mediation, and they have a whole I think they have a whole tab or site within their site for families and for that information. And then our SEA, or our state education agency, is the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce Office for Exceptional Children. They are also a resource, and there's a lot of information on their website as well. And with that being said, I will now open it up if there's any last questions or discussion.
While we're waiting for that, Tammy, I just want to highlight for people some of the things that are available on DERO's website specific to this topic. So there are a lot of FAQs on our website about special education issues that will explain the law and provide advocacy tips for resolving a particular dispute around a topic like extended school year or transportation, that kind of thing. We have a really good publication called Negotiation Skills for Parents, How to Get the Special Education Your Child with a Disability Needs. And that publication guides you through the entire special education process and gives tips and tricks about communicating and resolving at the lowest possible level. I really encourage people to read that publication and send it around to anybody you think might need it. We also have a series of sample letters that parents can use to ask the school district for things, kind of helps them format their letter and ask it in the, I guess, right way. So I encourage you to go on our website. It's under the self-advocacy resource portion of our website. And then you'll see a bunch of boxes for topics. If you go to the education box and click on that, that will bring you up all of the information that we have around education that's available on our website.
Thank you, Kristen. And I could not remember the name of the negotiation skills resource, but that is a great resource that I always direct families to as well. There is a question in the Q&A. I just think I need clarification on why not an auto process for parents once a parent begins the process. So I guess I need clarification on that. I'm thinking that, are you saying, like, so there are your procedural safeguards. I don't know if that's what you're talking about as an auto process, as far as what the knowledge should be and what were the resources.
It looks like they said it's regarding eligibility. So why is it not an automatic process for parents once a parent starts eligibility, is how I'm understanding it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know why there's not an auto. There's definitely, I mean, so as far as eligibility is concerned, is you have to understand and know whether or not there's a suspected disability under IDEA. And I think that really requires collecting data and documentation. So with there being an auto process, I don't think you would be able to do that without gathering that information. I hope that answered that, but I'm not.
Yeah, I think it also is not automatic because of the requirements of IDEA and the individualized nature of determining eligibility. And so Belinda, you probably know that there, in the law, a school district is not required to move forward with that evaluation unless they suspect a disability. And that's part of the reason why it's not automatic. So, and I think that being in the law is simply a way for resources to be conserved and school districts not have to go through unnecessary paperwork and administrative procedures if that student really is not going to qualify for an IEP. So yeah, it would be nice if there were that process, but I think because of the nature of IDEA and the individualized nature of it, they just can't, it can't be automatic. There have to be stop gaps during that process.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen, for that sets, yeah. Well, I think we answered that. Yeah. So if there's any other questions or anything that you feel like I didn't cover, Kristen, Emily, you can hop in now. If not, I will go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, well, it looks like we don't have any. Well, thank you everybody for being such great listeners. I hope you received a lot of information and tools you can use today. You can always, if you have any questions that come up, you could always reach back out to us. If there are concerns, you can always go through our intake. And if, you know, like I said, if there's any questions or concerns we talked about today, you can go on our website. There's plenty of resources. And then I will also end with, again, repeating that we have recorded this, and this will be posted to our website. So if you were only able to come on for a little bit and you had to log off, you will be able to review that. So with that being said, I will just let you know that our next training is next week. And we will have, I believe Melissa will be back. I think that's right, Melissa. We having you back. I'm at the end of the series, so
Yes.
yes, Melissa, you'll be doing
Social Security transition.
Social Security. That's right, Social Security for transition age youth. Thank you for jumping in. And Melissa will be back next week, so please join us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Thank you, Tammy.
Bye.